You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Containerized applications have transformed the way software is built, delivered, and operated, but their portability and speed come with new security concerns. The purpose of container security is to ensure that every image originates from trusted sources, registries enforce strong governance, and runtime environments operate with the principle of least privilege. Without these safeguards, containers can propagate vulnerabilities quickly across development, staging, and production environments. A single compromised image can spread to hundreds of nodes in seconds, multiplying risk. By focusing on trusted image creation, strict registry controls, and hardened runtime settings, organizations can build confidence that their containerized workloads are not only agile, but also resilient. Security in this space is about creating strong guardrails at every stage of the lifecycle: build, distribution, and execution, so that containers deliver both speed and assurance. Container images are the building blocks of containerized apps. They package application code together with its dependencies into immutable layers, ensuring that the same environment can be run across laptops, staging servers, or production clusters. This immutability is what makes containers portable, but it also means any flaw in an image is baked into every deployment. For example, if a vulnerable library is included in the base image, every container launched from it carries that weakness. Treating images as critical supply chain artifacts rather than disposable wrappers is key to securing them. Just as manufacturers inspect raw materials, teams must scrutinize container images before allowing them into circulation. To store and distribute these images securely, private registries are used. A registry is the central repository from which container engines pull images, and it must enforce authentication, authorization, and retention governance. Without access controls, anyone could push malicious images into the pipeline or pull sensitive internal images out. For instance, developers may have read-only access, while build systems hold credentials for writing new versions. Retention policies also matter. Outdated images with known vulnerabilities should be archived or deleted to prevent accidental reuse. Registries function as both warehouses and gatekeepers, controlling the flow of images into runtime environments. Image provenance builds trust by tracking where an image came from, who built it, and how it has been signed. Provenance data often includes the source repository, the builder identity, and a cryptographic digest that verifies integrity. If an image's digest does not match its expected value, it may have been tampered with during distribution. For example, platforms can enforce that only images signed by an internal build system are allowed to run in production. This ensures authenticity and integrity, making provenance as important to containers as chain of custody records are to physical goods. Without it, there is no way to prove that an image is what it claims to be. A software bill of materials, or SBOM, strengthens container transparency by listing every component included in the image, along with version numbers and licenses. Embedding SBOM data into image metadata allows security teams to know exactly what is inside, making vulnerability tracking far more efficient. For instance, when a new vulnerability is disclosed in an open-source library, organizations can query their SBOMs to find which images are affected. SBOMs also clarify licensing obligations, ensuring compliance with open-source terms. Much like food labels, SBOMs provide visibility into ingredients so consumers can make informed decisions. Without them, containers are opaque black boxes, making risk management guesswork. Running containers with root privileges is one of the most common and dangerous misconfigurations. Non-root execution avoids this by creating a dedicated user inside the image and running processes under that account. If a container is compromised, an attacker operating as root could escalate privileges and break out into the host system. Running as a non-root user significantly reduces this risk. For example, A web service inside a container only needs permission to read its own configuration and serve traffic, not to reconfigure the host operating system. Least privilege execution limits blast radius and enforces better isolation. Beyond root access, Linux capabilities further refine what processes inside a container can do. By default, containers may inherit a broad set of kernel capabilities, but most applications do not need them. Dropping unneeded capabilities, such as the ability to load kernel modules or change network settings, shrinks the attack surface. For example, a simple API service should not have the capability to administer networking interfaces. By reducing capabilities to the bare minimum, organizations prevent attackers from misusing powerful system-level functions. Capabilities act like individual keys. The fewer keys a process holds, the fewer doors it can open. Read-only root file systems provide another layer of containment. In a read-only configuration, containers cannot modify binaries or configuration files at runtime. This ensures that attackers cannot alter system files or plant persistence mechanisms. For example, if malware attempts to write a backdoor into the root directory, the action simply fails. Legitimate application data can still be stored in writable volumes mounted separately, but the base system remains immutable. Read-only roots turn containers into locked boxes, protecting their integrity against in-process tampering. Minimal base images reduce attack surface by stripping out unnecessary components. Many vulnerabilities arise not from the main application, but from unused tools bundled into an image, such as compilers, shells, or package managers. A lean base image that includes only the essentials limits these opportunities. For example, Alpine Linux provides a lightweight base with just the libraries needed to run applications. Smaller images also reduce scanning time and make updates faster, creating both performance and security benefits. The principle is simple. If a tool is not needed at runtime, it should not be in the image. Registries must also enforce admission policies that prevent untrusted images from entering runtime. These policies can require signature verification, block images from unknown publishers, or forbid certain tags. For example, a policy might reject any image that is unsigned, or that comes from a third-party registry not on the approved list. Admission control ensures that only vetted artifacts enter production clusters, creating a controlled supply chain. Without these checks, malicious or accidental uploads can sneak into the environment unnoticed, undermining other layers of defense. Protecting registry access itself requires careful handling of image pull secrets. These secrets store the credentials needed for nodes or clusters to authenticate with private registries. They must be encrypted, rotated regularly, and granted under least privilege principles. For example, a cluster pulling images for a single namespace should not have credentials allowing it to push new images. Compromised registry secrets can allow attackers to inject malicious images or steal proprietary ones, so strong controls are essential. Treating pull secrets as sensitive assets reinforces the overall security chain. Resource limits help ensure fairness and stability in container platforms. By defining CPU and memory bounds, organizations prevent containers from monopolizing host resources, a risk sometimes referred to as the noisy neighbor problem. Without limits, a single container could consume so much memory or processing power that other services fail. Limits also reduce the risk of denial of service attacks, since malicious or runaway processes cannot exceed defined quotas. For example, a worker container might be limited to 1 GB of memory and 1 CPU core, keeping its resource footprint predictable. These guardrails make multi-tenant clusters safer and more reliable. Health probes are essential for ensuring that containers can be rolled out safely and recovered automatically when problems arise. Liveness probes detect when a container has stopped functioning correctly and trigger restarts, while readiness probes confirm when it is safe to send traffic to a container. For example, a new application version may take several seconds to initialize before it can accept requests. Readiness probes prevent traffic from being sent too early. Automated probing reduces downtime and ensures that rollouts do not inadvertently expose users to broken services. Health checks add resilience by integrating self-monitoring into the runtime environment. Network policies restrict communication between pods and external destinations. By default, Kubernetes allows open communication, but strict policies can limit traffic to only what is explicitly authorized. For example, an application frontend might be allowed to talk to a backend API, but not directly to a database. These rules reduce opportunities for lateral movement if one workload is compromised. Network segmentation at the container level mirrors practices long used in traditional firewalls, enforcing boundaries that attackers cannot easily cross. Fine-grained network controls make clusters far more resistant to exploitation. Secrets management is another critical runtime concern. Secrets should never be baked directly into images or stored as plain environment variables. Instead, they should be mounted at runtime from a platform's secret store, such as Kubernetes Secrets or an external vault. This ensures that sensitive values remain encrypted, rotated, and auditable. For example, a container needing a database password retrieves it securely at startup, rather than embedding it in the image. By separating secrets from images, organizations avoid accidental leaks in registries or version control systems. Secrets must be treated as living assets, governed independently from code. Logging completes the picture by providing observability into container behavior. Applications should log to standard output and error streams in structured formats that can be collected centrally. Logs must avoid exposing sensitive data, since centralized systems often aggregate information from multiple sources. For instance, authentication logs should record failure events without including raw passwords. Structured logging not only aids security monitoring, but also supports compliance, making runtime activity transparent and auditable. Containers are short-lived, but their logs preserve valuable evidence long after instances have been recycled. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Admission controllers serve as gatekeepers for container deployments, enforcing organizational policy before workloads go live. These controllers evaluate images, user IDs, namespace usage, and capabilities at deploy time, rejecting anything that does not comply. For example, a policy may block images that lack signatures or containers configured to run as root. Admission controllers ensure that standards are applied consistently, turning security rules into enforceable checkpoints rather than optional guidance. They provide confidence that only vetted, policy-compliant workloads make it into runtime environments, significantly reducing the chance of misconfiguration or malicious insertion. Vulnerability scanning is another critical step, performed at multiple points in the container lifecycle. Images should be scanned at build time to catch known flaws early, on push to registries to ensure compliance, and on a schedule to detect newly disclosed vulnerabilities. For example, a base image that was secure last month may now contain a critical library flaw identified in a new CVE. Scheduled scanning ensures these risks do not linger unnoticed. By integrating scanning into CI/CD pipelines and registries, organizations make vulnerability management proactive and continuous, rather than reactive. Governance around image tags plays a surprisingly important role in container security. Mutable tags such as latest create unpredictability because they can silently change to point to different images over time. For example, two environments pulling the latest tag might end up running different builds. Best practice is to require semantic versioning, where tags correspond to immutable builds, such as 1.4.2. This guarantees reproducibility and allows teams to trace exactly which image was deployed. Tag governance eliminates ambiguity, making images verifiable and deployments predictable across environments. The sidecar pattern improves security by separating supporting functions from the main application. For instance, a sidecar proxy may handle TLS termination, while the main container focuses on business logic. Similarly, sidecars can fetch secrets, collect metrics, or manage logs, each operating under distinct policies. This separation reduces complexity in the application container and allows supporting tasks to be governed independently. Sidecars also improve isolation, since compromise of one container does not necessarily extend to others. By compartmentalizing duties, the sidecar pattern brings defense in depth to containerized design. Volume management is another sensitive area, since poorly controlled mounts can expose hosts or sensitive data. Using host path volumes directly ties containers to host directories, increasing the risk of escape or corruption. Secure practices avoid host path entirely, enforce encryption at rest for volumes, and scope mounts as narrowly as possible. For example, a pod that needs configuration files should mount only the necessary directory, not the entire file system. Proper volume controls prevent containers from reaching beyond their intended boundaries, maintaining both isolation and confidentiality. Egress policies further harden container environments by restricting outbound communication. Without these controls, compromised containers could call out to command and control servers or exfiltrate sensitive data. By limiting outbound domains and protocols, organizations prevent unauthorized communication channels. For example, a front-end container may only be allowed to connect to approved APIs, not arbitrary internet destinations. These restrictions contain threats within the cluster, stopping compromised workloads from becoming launch points for broader attacks. Egress controls complement ingress filtering, ensuring security at both entry and exit points. Service mesh policies add cryptographic assurance to containerized communications. With mutual TLS, or MTLS, every service authenticates itself to its peers, ensuring trust between workloads. Mesh policies also enforce request-level authorization, ensuring that only approved services can communicate. For example, a payment service may accept requests only from a specific front-end component, not from other unrelated pods. Service meshes create a security fabric within clusters, embedding identity and encryption into every interaction. This ensures that communications remain confidential, authenticated, and authorized at scale. Runtime detection tools observe container activity for anomalies, often using extended Berkeley packet filter or eBPF to capture kernel events. By monitoring system calls, file activity, and process behavior, these tools can flag suspicious actions in real time. For instance, if a lightweight API container suddenly attempts to open a shell or alter system binaries, alerts are generated. Runtime detection bridges the gap between preventative policy and live monitoring, catching novel attacks that bypass static controls. eBPF enables this visibility at low overhead, making runtime security practical for high-density environments. Update strategies also play a role in maintaining container security. Blue, green, and canary deployments allow new versions of images or configurations to roll out gradually, minimizing risk. If issues appear, fast rollback ensures systems return to known good states without lengthy outages. For example, a flawed image can be pulled back in seconds, limiting user impact. These strategies not only improve resilience but also provide confidence to deploy updates more frequently, reducing exposure to unpatched vulnerabilities. Controlled rollouts transform updates from risky events into routine, reliable practices. Cache and layer hygiene is essential to keep images lean and secure. During builds, temporary files, package managers, and compilers may be introduced but should be removed from final layers. Leaving these artifacts increases image size and provides unnecessary tools for attackers. For instance, a container with a leftover compiler enables attackers to build malware inside the runtime. Clean layering ensures that images contain only what is necessary for execution. Smaller, well-maintained images are easier to scan, faster to distribute, and less prone to hidden risks. Isolation in multi-tenant environments is a critical concern, since multiple teams or customers may share the same cluster. Strong boundaries can be enforced through namespaces, separate clusters, or even distinct accounts. For example, sensitive workloads may operate in dedicated clusters with stricter controls, while less critical applications share a general-purpose environment. This reduces the blast radius if one tenant is compromised. Multi-tenant isolation ensures that a vulnerability in one workload does not cascade across unrelated services, preserving security at scale. Evidence artifacts provide auditors and responders with the proof needed to demonstrate container governance. These include SBOMs documenting contents, vulnerability scan reports, admission controller decisions, and runtime alert histories. Collecting and retaining these artifacts shows that security practices are not just aspirational but actively enforced. For example, during an audit, organizations can demonstrate that only signed images were admitted and that vulnerabilities were addressed promptly. Evidence transforms container security from invisible processes into verifiable, accountable practices. When incidents do occur, response runbooks provide structured guidance. Runbooks define steps such as revoking a compromised image, quarantining affected registries, and redeploying from known good digests. For instance, if a malicious image is discovered, responders can pull it from circulation, block it in the registry, and restore service from a secure backup. Having these actions predefined accelerates containment and reduces uncertainty in crisis moments. Incident response in container environments must be as agile as the technology itself, with runbooks enabling rapid, confident action. Recognizing anti-patterns is equally important to maintaining security. Running privileged containers, for example, effectively bypasses isolation and grants near-root access to the host. Using host networking exposes containers directly to external networks, eliminating protective abstractions. Broad wildcard mirrors in registries allow uncontrolled image sources, opening the door to malicious artifacts. These shortcuts may offer convenience, but at the cost of massive risk. Avoiding these anti-patterns ensures that container practices remain aligned with the principle of least privilege and controlled trust. For learners preparing for exams, container security should be seen through three lenses: image trust, registry enforcement, and runtime hardening. Secure image sources ensure that workloads begin from a known good state. Enforced admission guarantees that only compliant artifacts progress into deployment. Runtime least privilege protects live environments by containing and monitoring workloads. These elements map directly to real-world practices as well as exam frameworks, where containerization is increasingly emphasized as a key part of modern cloud security. In summary, trustworthy containerized applications emerge from disciplined control at every stage of the lifecycle. Verified images, strict registry policies, and hardened runtime settings form a layered defense that prevents vulnerabilities from spreading unchecked. By combining admission control, runtime detection, network segmentation, and evidence-driven governance, organizations transform containers from potential risks into secure, auditable assets. With the right practices, containerization delivers on its promise of agility and scale without sacrificing the assurance of strong security foundations. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.